Greetings, my fellow philosophical sovereign thinkers. This is LLP's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mango, South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, February 9th, 2019. So let us begin. Thanks for tuning in, my friends. Yeah, it's been a while since I did last podcast. Just been working a lot. Had to do some personal things, but nothing really to explain, but it's part of life. Yes, I know some of my coworkers are like praising about the Venezuela takeover, overthrow, Maduro, and all that. And I'm just scratching my head and just go, man, you folks need to study your history before jumping the gun. Just to be frank, I am not a Maduro worshiper. I know many of my listeners, all past listeners, understand that, but for the first timers. And I talk about some of the actions, including that nation's been hijacked by a central bank since 1939. You can say Rothschild-related, IMF, World Bank, etc., all across the board. Now you're hearing about, so they talk about that, overthrowing them. So okay, so you're going to bring in one clown and get another one. Hey, that's great. But one thing I got to say, my friends, like I said all in due time, people got to liberate themselves against tyranny. You shouldn't be calling sweet pie purebred. Help me underdog. Help those that help themselves? Absolutely. That's not an issue at all. But one thing you got to know for sure, Kio Bono, who benefits? What's going on over there is happening worldwide. Look at areas in Africa. No one really talks about that. You don't hear that in the mainstream news or garbage news. So I'm going to be talking about that by one great senator that represents Florida. One of my favorite glam boys. That'd be Marco Rubio. And another one, too, is about Robert Mueller. Yeah. I'm just wondering how many people that hate Trump still bow down and lick this guy's boots for all I know. Stop wasting your energy on this treasonous individual because he don't give a damn about any of us. He'll toss your ass under the bus for a personal gain. But before all that, I'm going to be narrating a cool little story. And I got this on my email, which is... this here. Oh shoot! On my email, me from the Mises Institute, and this is a good, very good article here by Ludwig von Mises, which he's not around anymore. May so be forever free. Says progressives' attack on capitalism were key to Hitler's success. That's a great title. Hopefully I should send this to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on this matter. Because she believes she knows better than everyone else how to live and how to make a living. And how to do business. Alright, well, let's just read here. The following written 1940s excerpt from Interventionism, an economic analyst, which was originally part of Nationalökonomie, the German predecessor to human action. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini constantly proclaimed that they are chosen by destiny to bring salvation to this world. Sounds familiar, right? They claim they are leaders of the creative youth who fight against their outlived elders. They bring from the East a new culture which is to replace the dying Western civilization. They want to give the coup de grace to liberalism and capitalism. They want to overcome immoral egoism by altruism. They plan to replace the anarchic democracy by order and organization. The society of classes by the total state. The market economy by socialism. There is a war. It is not a war for territorial expansion, for loot and hegemony, like the imperialistic wars of the past, but a holy crusade for a better world to live in. And they feel certain of their victory because they are convinced that they are born by the wave of the future. Hey, so remember talking about that my past episode, folks? The Green New Deal? Yeah, check it out. Very good. It is a law of nature. They say that great historic changes cannot take place peacefully or without conflict. It would be pretty and stupid, they contend, to overlook the creative quality of their work because some unpleasantness which great world revolution must necessarily bring with it. They maintain one should not overlook the glory of the new gospel because of ill place for petty Jews and Masons, Poles and Czechs, Finns and Greeks, the decadent English atrocity and the corrupt French bourgeoisie. Such softness and such blindness for new standards of morality prove only the decadence of the dying capitalistic pseudo-culture. The whining and crying of impotent men, they say, is futile. It will not stop the victorious advance of youth. No one can stop the wheel of history or turn back the clock of time. The success of this propaganda is overwhelming. People do not consider the content of alleged new gospels. They merely understand that this is a new and believe to see in this fact its justification. As women welcome a new style in clothes just to have a change, so supposedly new style in politics and economics is welcome. How trendy, right? Hi, I'm Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm from the Bronx. Come on. You gotta believe that hype, folks? Good grief. That's for you. Hopefully you send that to those worshipers, okay? People hasten to exchange their old ideas for the new ones because they fear to appear old-fashioned and retractionary. They join the chorus of decrying the shortcomings of the capitalistic civilization and speak in elated enthusiasm of the achievements of the autocrats. Nothing more is more fashionable than slandering Western civilization. Yes, remember, like, white privilege! You got white privilege! That's just an example. I love talking about this because it's great. This mentality has made it easy for Hitler to gain his victories. The Czechs and the Danes capitulated without a fight. Norwegian officers handed over large sections of their country to Hitler's army. The Dutch and the Belgians gave in only after a short resistance. The French had the audacity to celebrate the destruction of their independence as a national revival. It took Hitler 5 years to effect the Actualist of Austria. 2.5 years later, he was master of the European continent. Hitler does not have a secret weapon at his disposal. He does not owe his history to an excellent intelligence service, which informs him of the plans of his opponents. Even much talk on the fifth column was not decisive. He won because supposed opponents were already quite sympathetic to the ideas for which he stood. My Lord and Savior, hallelujah. Only those who unconditionally and unrestrictedly consider the market economy as the only workable form of social cooperation are opponents of totalitarian systems and are capable of fighting them successfully. Those who want socialism intend to bring to their country the system which Russia and Germany enjoy. To favor interventionism means enter a road which invariably leads to socialism. An ideological struggle cannot be fought successfully without constant concessions to the principles of the enemy. Those who refute capitalism because it supposedly is inimical to the interests of the masses. Those who proclaim a master of course that their victory over Hitler, the market economy, will have to be replaced by a better system, and therefore everything should be done now to make government control of business as complete as possible, are actually fighting for totalitarianism. The progressives today who masquerade as liberals may rant against fascism, yet it is their policy that pays the way for Hitlerism. So we can say they are exercising hypocrisy indeed. Nothing could have been more helpful to the success of the National Socialist movement, which is Nazi, Ingram for that, than the methods used by the progressives, denouncing Nazism, the party serving the interests of capital. The German workers knew this tactic too well to be deceived by it again. Was it not true that Since the 70s of the last century, the ostensibly pro-labor Social Democrats fought all the pro-labor measures of the German government vigorously, calling them bourgeois and injurious to the interest of the working class. Hopefully I pronounced that word right. Bourgeois. Hopefully I pronounced it right. So, the Social Democrats has consistently voted against the nationalization of the railroads, the municipalization of public utilities, labor legislation, and compulsory accident, sickness, and old age insurance. The German Social Security system, which was adopted later throughout the world. Then after World War I, the communists branded the German Social Democratic Party and the Social Democratic Unions as traitors to their class. You see what's going on here? Same crap, different clubs. My club is better than yours. All right? I'll go on here. So the German workers realized that every party wooing them, called the competing parties, the willing servants of capitalism, and their allegiance to Nazism would not be shattered by such phrases. Hopefully the folks from Antifa, that paper movement, are listening to this. Unless we utterly the obvious to the facts, we must realize that German workers are the most reliable supporters of the Hitler regime. Nazism has won them over completely by eliminating unemployment and by reducing entrepreneurs to the status of shop managers, or they call it. It's called Betriebsführer. Big business, shopkeepers, and peasants are disappointed. Labor is well satisfied and will stand by Hitler, unless the war takes a turn which will destroy their hope for a better life after the peace treaty. Only military reserves can deprive Hitler of the backing of the German workers. The facts that the capitalists and entrepreneurs face with the alternative of communism or Nazism chose the latter does not require any further explanation. They prefer to live as shop managers under Hitler, to be liquidated as bourgeois by Stalin. Capitalists don't like to be killed any more than other people do. What pernicious effects may be produced by believing that the German workers are opposed to Hitler was proved by the English tactics during the first year of the war. The government of Neville Chamberlain firmly believed that the war would be brought to an end by a revolution of German workers, instead of concentrating on vigorous arming and fighting. That they had their places drop leaflets over Germany, telling the German workers that England was not fighting this war against them, but against their oppressor, Hitler. The English government knew very well. They said that the German people, particularly labor, were against the war and were only forced into it by their self-imposed dictator. You know, I'll tell this, folks, I recommend check out this movie Hellstorm. Just look it up online. It's by, his name is Richard Goodhart, I think maybe his name is. But it's very powerful. And a lot of German folks, too, the rank and file, they suffered a lot from this war as well. So yeah, just to look at both sides, because you have the right to know what happened to them. I'll continue on here. The workers in the Anglo-Saxon countries, too, knew that socialist parties are competing for their favor, accuse each other of favoring capitalism. Communists of all shades advanced this accusation against socialists, and within the communist groups, the Trotskyites used the same surge against Stalin and his men, and vice versa. It's like internal cloak and dagger, right? The fact that the progressives bring the same accusation against Nazism and fascism will not prevent labor someday from following another gang wearing shirts of a different color. What is wrong with Western civilization is the accepted habit of judging political parties merely by asking whether they seem new and radical enough, not by analyzing whether they are wise or unwise, or whether they are apt to achieve their aims. Nothing that exists today is reasonable. Oops. But this does not mean that everything does not exist is sensible. The usual terminology of political language is stupid. What is left and what is right? Why should Hitler be right and Stalin's temporary friend be left? Who is reactionary and who is progressive? Reactionary against the unwise policy is not to be condemned, and progress towards chaos is not to be commended. Nothing should find acceptance just because it's new, radical, and fashionable. Orthodoxy is not evil if the doctrine on which the orthodox stand is sound. Who is anti-labor? Those who want to lower labor to the Russian level, or those who want for labor the capitalistic standard of the United States. Who is nationalist? Those who want to bring their nation under the heel of the Nazis, or those who want to preserve its independence. What would have happened to Russian civilization if its people had always shown such liking for the new? Suppose they had welcomed as the wave of the future Attila and his Huns, the creed of Muhammad, or the Tartars. They too were totalitarian, had military successes to their credit, which made the weak hesitate and ready to capitulate. What mankind needs today is liberation from the rule of non-sensual slogans and return to a sound reasoning. Great commentary by Mr. von Mises. May his soul be forever free. The truth of the matter is, my friends, we see this right now. These little Mickey Mouse clubs, these synthetic movements, mind-controlled masturbators, I call them. I see right through these folks. A lot of them suck at it. So hit those little typical buzzwords and everyone jumps. Is it part of mind control? Absolutely. Lesser magic? Of course. So your job and mine is cut right through the smoke screen and examine the fine print. We are all intelligent enough to pursue it. More things change, more stays the same. And I got folks in my Facebook page and other people I chat with have different views. But I'll give them credit. The ones I chat with, they're willing to learn. And I love them for it. I'm not here to change minds, but inspire others. Liberate yourself from this propaganda matrix. Look what happened. Cult of personalities. It's happening everywhere, including the United States. Trump haters, Trump worshippers, Hillary lovers. I can go on. Study your constitutions as well, and study history of economics. If you don't know about, you learn about capitalism, read the stuff by Adam Smith. See, and you have the opportunity to see the bigger picture. A lot of people don't know these terms. When someone tells me about the Affordable Care Act was socialism, no, it's not. It's fascism because corporations were involved. That includes the HMO Act of 1973. Don't believe the hype, my friends. That's what they're good for. They want to fish you in, hook, line, and sinker. Abominors are a very good example too. Because he has an elegant way of speaking. It was like, yay! You're right, because I don't even know my Constitution. I just voted for you. I didn't care about anything else. That's unhealthy too. Knowledge is power, my friends. And blatant ignorance is enslavement. The past is today's greatest teacher. Think about that. So if you see someone who supports the Green New Deal, ask them this. Do you believe Adolf Hitler was your Lord and Savior too? Then explain. Share this with them, please. And I thank you for your time. All right. Next one here. Originally came from the AtomicEarth.com. It was actually been shared by Strategic Culture Foundation. And this is pretty cool. It is by Baru Lagarde Magier. Robert Mueller is a coward and a liar. This came out a couple of days ago. As it reads here, the statement is going to make me real popular, right? Any criticism of Mueller for many people equals support for President Trump. But it doesn't. And Mueller really is a coward and a liar. And it's not hard to make that case. It's even easier that how he makes his cases because we can actually prove ours. We also don't have to pervert the law, but he does. Robert Mueller's a coward because he again, in his indictment of Roger Stone last week, makes claims against people who can't defend themselves and who, moreover, have in at least one case that of Julian Assange. Previously and repeatedly denied those claims. Robert Mueller's a liar because many of his claims are evidently not true. But he will never be able to prove them. And he knows it. He still makes his case based on them. It's also public knowledge that Mueller has lied since at least the WMD facade on February 11, 2003. Then FBI Director Robert Mueller testified before Congress. Okay, so Director, who was president at that time? George Herbert Walker Bush, Jorge Jr. himself. I will continue on here. As Director, Tenet has pointed out, Secretary Powell presented evidence last week that Baghdad has failed to disarm its weapons of mass destruction, willfully attempting to evade and deceive the international community. Our particular concern is that Saddam Hussein may supply terrorists with biological, chemical, or radiological material. We all know he was lying, as with Colin Powell and the entire Bush administration, which is also interesting because a number of Mueller's accusations against various suspects are basically just that. Someone has lied to Congress, it must be punished for it. See, what he's saying is Robert Mueller is a habitual liar. I think it's great. I'll continue on here. This is the case again. This is again the case in Roger Stone's indictment, which would ring awfully hollow without it. And we don't have to know how true that accusation is to realize that it's being brought by someone who himself lied to Congress, but was never indicted for it. That is curious no matter how you look at it. All hail to exceptionalism. Hip hip hooray. So, what would happen if Mueller takes any of his present indictments into a courtroom? No, as long as he threats those he indicts the same way he treated Paul Manafort and others, he'll probably never have to present anything in court. Every suspect will sign a plea deal because he threatens to destroy them, their freedom, their finances, their families. But what if he did purely hypothetically? What proof, not allegations, could he present to a judge about Russian hacking U.S.-based servers or computers? And what evidence for Julian Assange working with Russians or with the Trump campaign? He has none. All there is a U.S. intelligence agency making claim without providing evidence. Yes, I got nothing in my pockets, but he's guilty because I said so. And they are partly to the whole story. They are not mere observers. So no judge worth her salt can accept their word on anything just because it's them saying it. Even the FBI has to present evidence in court, that is. In the meantime, the absence of a courtroom, Robert Mueller has been free to accuse people for 20 months now without proof. And what those months have shown us to culminate in the Roger Stone indictment, what makes clear once more that there was no collision between Russia and the Trump campaign. Given his legal status, Mueller should be invested With the power to the man, he gets the opportunity to talk to Assange. And in the unlikely event that he's not provided with that opportunity by his superiors, at the very least, he must stop talking about Assange. Can't talk to him, then stop talking about him. Sure, he never mentions his name, but that's just more cowardice. We all know who Organization 1 is in Mueller's indictment. And we all know who spoke for Organization 1 before he was muzzled. Absolutely. It's so obvious, my friend. He's not slick. He's just a fool. This treasonous scumbag, Robert Mueller. And you can tell him I said so. I don't give a damn. I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Mueller could be, for instance, travel to the Ecuadorian embassy in London after negotiating both with the man himself and with authorities from Ecuador, UK, and US to have a meeting with Assange, considering his opponents as head of the investigation into collusion that might topple a president and start a new Cold War with Russia. That shouldn't be easy to do. But Mueller hasn't talked to Assange, nor he has indicated that he tried. Excuse me here, folks. Mueller accused Assange without talking to him should raise suspicion that he is not interested in finding the truth, but has other goals. And that shines a dark light on his entire investigation because of the fact itself, but also because Assange is a pivotal person in the entire Russia collusion narrative. Mueller can't make his case without accusing, defaming Assange. Assange is a crucial in the Mueller indictment of 12 Russians issued conveniently 3 days before the Trump-Putin summit in Helsinki. He's crucial in the case made against Paul Manafort, and he's again crucial in the indictment of Roger Stone. Without Assange, Mueller's hands are empty. Julia is presented as a conduit between Trump and Russia. No conduit, no connection. And Assange has always denied the entire thing, all of it. People who have been accused of letting alone indicted in a crime must be given their day in court, says American law, to be able to defend themselves against their accusers. But Assange is not, which means Mueller is no less than a grave threat to the entire American justice system. Not Mueller alone, for sure, but he, along with the Attorney General and the Deputy AG, and believe it or not, the President, are immediately responsible for the way the justice system is being perverted. That is very serious business. You can say it's true. It is a big possibility. Even you Trump supporters out there better look at the bigger picture. As I said before, Mueller first supposedly accidentally dragged Assange into this investigation 3 days before the July 16, 2018 Trump-Putin meeting in Helsinki, when he indicted 12 Russians in Organization 1. That indictment is here. You can look it up yourselves. It was arguably the first tangible thing that came out of the investigation, and while it was heralded as a gospel by everyone who wants Trump to hang, it was a shot so full of holes by others in no time that term tangible perhaps needs to be replaced. The first indictment was not based in facts. It was based on faith. U.S. intelligence. 12 Russians who can't defend themselves were grouped together as Guccifer II, whose Russian lineage was also shot to smithereens within hours. And then there was Assange. Last week's indictment of that Roger Stone, perhaps, we can't be sure, alludes to Stone colluding with either Russians or Assange, but it carries no evidence of any collusion. As WikiLeaks tweeted, the indictment doesn't have any reference to Stone talking to Assange, or Assange talking to Stone, or anyone at WikiLeaks telling him anything whatsoever. It's literally old men reading the news and wishing for things. Yeah, the wet dream. That's what he's saying here. The job of a special counsel, his or her mandate, is to gather evidence of those crimes he has been tasked with investigating. That mandate can be wide, but certainly not unlimited. The job at hand is not suggest that things might have happened. It's not to blindly follow everything U.S. intelligence may or may not claim is true, because all the accusations will eventually have to be proven in a courtroom. As absolutely. And it is not to point fingers at people for things the special counsel can't prove they've done, or to the accused people who cannot defend themselves whatever he or she might, because then he or she might say anything. Mueller has never charged Assange with anything, despite the fact that Julian's all over all of his indictments. Mueller also refused to talk to Assange, ostensibly because that way he can't continue to accuse him of all manner of unproven crimes. And if he doesn't have to prove what he accuses Assange of, he can accuse anyone of being in touch with Assange and conspiring to enact all sorts of collusion. It's a pity that America is so divided into a pro-Trump and anti-Trump side, and never the twain shall meet. Because the perversion of the justice system exemplified by the Mueller investigation is very real. It's rotting from the inside. This has not about Trump. If anything, it's about the justice system granting someone the right to defend themselves, which is being violated by Robert Mueller on a daily basis. The Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Right to counsel. And I agree. Fifth and sixth. In early 2011, the DOJ attempted to set up meetings with Assange, who was in the process offered evidence that there was no Russian involvement in the files WikiLeaks published in 2016. Those attempts, when near completion, were halted by Mueller's very good friend James Comey and Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia. Pretentious jackasses indeed. Warner last week, in his capacity as Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman, said about the Stone indictment, "It is clear from this indictment that those contacts between Stone and WikiLeaks happened at least with the full knowledge of and appear to have been encouraged by the highest levels of the Trump campaign." No, Mr. Warner, that is a sort of the exact point here. It's not clear, nor is it true. And you know that, sir. And I have a question to Robert Mueller. Have you contacted Sheriff Troy from Broward County on arresting Mr. Stone? A year and a half later, in July 2018, Senator Rand Paul said that if Assange would agree to testify in the U.S., I think he should be given immunity from prosecution in exchange for coming to the United States and testifying. Nothing came from that either. Where was Mueller? Every single American should be alarmed by this perversion of justice. Nothing to do with what you think of Trump or of Assange. The very principles of the system are being perverted, including, but certainly not limited to, its deepest core, that of every individual's right to defend themselves. Just so Robert Mueller can continue his already failed investigation into collusion that has shown no such thing, and which would have been started 20 months ago if we knew then what we know now. Get off your Trump collusion hobby horse. That quest has already died regardless, and start defending the legal system and the Constitution. Because if you don't, what's to keep the next Robert Mueller from going after you or someone you like or love? It's in everyone's interest to demand that these proceedings, all legal proceedings, are conducted according to the new law, but not in Mueller's hands. They are not. And that should be a much bigger worry than whether or not you like or dislike a former game show host. You can get this from the AtomicEarth.com. I gotta say, he's spot on, and many of us who enlightened ones are seeing the bigger picture from all walks of life, political perspectives. We're all saying the Russian collusion was a sham from the very beginning. I never bought it. My mom bought it, and I love her. I'm like, Mom, don't fall for it. It's a big fat lie. You're not talking to a Trump worshiper. It's just the bigger picture. This is how parasites like Mr. Mueller is. He is less patriotic than Benedict Arnold, including his sidekick, James Comey. The butt-slamming crusaders, right? That's how I gotta look at this. As far as I'm concerned, he should be He should be in for gross misconduct. Yes, another deep state toady, New World Order Uncle Tom. That's Robert Mueller for you. Just an example. For all you Trump haters out there, if you let this go, you can be next. Thomas Paine recommends you gotta protect your enemies' liberties as well. If you don't, you create a president that can come after yourselves. I'm just paraphrasing that. That is the truth, folks. You better start paying attention. Got one more here. Came from the Ron Paul Institute, came out yesterday. And I see the sleaze bag, Marco Rubio, glam boy. Looks like a Cuban Ken doll. Nothing against the Cuban people because they're awesome. But I don't like these pretentious saps like him. And I say this ethically. It says here, the cynicism of empire. Senator Rubio tells Venezuelans to overthrow the government or starve. Dear friends of the Ron Paul Institute, there is a sad disregard for human life and the neocon regime changers. The devastation of Iraq, with its millions dead, was a merely stepping stone to a remaking of the Middle East. A Libya turned into a modern-day slave market after neocon-backed liberation is off the radar screen. Who cares, right? Syria suffered 500,000 dead after U.S.-backed jihadist insurgency, strongly backed by the neocons, and not a word of remorse. In fact, the remarkable act of Tripoli, neocons have taken to blaming the victims in Syria with the New York Post's Josh Rogan branding Assad, who fought and ultimately defeated U.S.-backed terrorists, and in so doing saved Syria's ancient Christian community and an enemy of humanity. One need not join the Assad fan club to come to the easy conclusion that an Al-Qaeda-controlled Hezbollah, for example, was a living hell, while Hezbollah, liberated by Assad, was soon on its feet again as multi-confessional and multicultural center of Syria. The sick disregard for human life as Washington grins up the regime change machine is on display again, bolder and more sadistic than ever. What witnessed the neoconservative senator from Florida, shown above, who tweeted today that as hunger growing in Venezuela, that country's military must take a choice whether to support U.S.-backed overthrow of its government or allow people to starve. Clearly threatening war, Rubio wrote. Military leaders should make a choice before a choice is made for them. I want to see you go on the front line, you pretentious coward. You sound rude. You sound like some tough guy. You better back it up. You go on the front line, Senator Rubio. Frat boy. Mint News Press writer Whitney Webb puts it best. Marco Rubio is openly saying that if Venezuelan military doesn't turn on Maduro soon, a choice will be made for them by the United States. The scariest threat for an imminent invasion of Venezuela, I have yet to see. Other neocons behind this regime change operation are showing signs of desperation as after more than a week of their backing, the U.S. elected interim president, who never run for office, there are not yet any major signs of the Maduro government crumbling under the pressure. National Security Advisor John Bolton, who spreads his buck cheeks to the Israeli intelligence community, who has spearheaded this idiotic operation, and he has helped spearhead the idiotic 2003 invasion of Iraq, is almost begging the Venezuelan military to change sides. He has no doubt frustrated that the cakewalk he likely promised Trump is to a point looking like no such thing. Bolton tweeted on Wednesday, the U.S. will consider sanctions off-ramps for any Venezuelan senior military officer that stands for democracy and recognizes the constitutional government of President Juan Guaido. If not, the international financial circle will be closed off completely. Make the right choice. Okay, tough guy, you old puss bag, you run up there. Let's see how tough you are. And take your sidekick, butt-slamming crusader, Marco Rubio, with you. Translation, want some money? Help us overthrow your government. God bless imperialism. The cynicism goes even deeper than that. However, after supporting the most brutal and aggressive sanctions against Venezuela for years, a policy that no doubt contributed to the misery they now pretend to seek to ameliorate. The regime changers are now dangling U.S. humanitarian aid in the front of the Venezuelans if only they come to the pro-rebel side and help overthrow their government. U.S. convoy of humanitarian relief trucks has set out in Colombia all the way to the Venezuelan border. After trying to starve Venezuela for years, suddenly the U.S. government dangles food in front of them for a price. Blackmail 101. Damage control, I would say, right? That's not humanitarian, it's inhumanitarianism. But the U.S. aid to convoy of Venezuela was so obvious a political move to use food as a weapon that even the UN and other NGOs refused to take part in the charade. Unsurprisingly, the Venezuelan government did not allow the U.S. convoy to enter its territory and deliver aid to any rebels that might be eager to receive it. Another example of how paranoid and unsustainable the Venezuelan government really is. No, actually, a couple of days earlier, another aid shipment was found to contain a cache of weapons slated for delivery to the rebels. Maybe they were just moderate rebels? You don't believe the U.S. government would make such a dishonest and dangerous move as to hide a cache of weapons inside a humanitarian aid shipment? Ha! For Bolton and his new old comrade in the charge of regime change in Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, this was a return to the good old days where such practice was in the day's work. In an article in 1987, Los Angeles Times informed us Oliver North and the Reagan administration aides deliberately used a 1986 program of humanitarian aid for the Nicaraguan rebels to help support the secret effort to deliver military aid to the Contras, U.S. officials said Monday. The aid was administered by the State Department's Nicaraguan Humanitarian Assistance Office, but officials said that all significant decisions were made by a restrictive internet agency group consisting of North, assisting of State Elliot Abrams, and Alan D. Fears, chief of the CIA's Central American Task Force, emphasis added. Bolton, Abrams, and the rest of the Trump's neocons aren't even trying to make this original. They pulled the old 1980s support Latin American dictators playbook off the shelf, and they are blatantly plagiarizing themselves. And the tens of thousands of innocent dead littering the scorched earth of their murderous policies. Don't expect an apology. They are panting for more death and destruction. The U.S. aid convoy to Venezuela was a farce from the beginning. Delivering humanitarian aid was the last thing on the neocon mind. Much more important was to deliver a message, and thanks to the savagely complainant mainstream media in the U.S. and amongst its allies, that message was amplified to all corners of the globe. As German government mouthpiece Deutsche Welle put it, Maduro rejects humanitarian aid as the nation starves. Scoring that headline a major win for CIA and other PSYOP masters. Except unlike Yemen, where the Germans and other allies backed the U.S. in the Saudi genocide of the population amidst plenty of concrete evidence of horrific starvation, there is no evidence of anything remotely resembling a Yemen-like starvation nightmare in Venezuela. If there was, we see it in full livid detail. And again, Yemen doesn't count because it is the U.S. and its allies doing the starving and blocking the humanitarian relief. Can we say double standards? Oh, that's okay. We're government. We can do whatever we want. The neocons still have not broken with the Venezuelan government, but they are not out of weapons. Secretary of State and top neocon dog Mike Pompeo may be about to go nuclear. In the face of stalled regime change, Pompeo came out yesterday with the outlandish claim that the Venezuela is now a central battleground in the war on terror. Oh, man, I'm sorry. I'm just laughing. It's like, okay, we'll just do everything backwards. We'll just repeat the same thing. And go, okay, master, you sound right. I'm sorry, I just had to laugh. He told Fox News, Trish Reagan, that Venezuela is full of active Ebola cells, and that Iranians are impacting the people of Venezuela and throughout the South America. Oh, really, Mr. Pompeo? It's like if I take a dump, you tell me it's healthy. Okay, I'll do it. Come on. He added, ominously, we have an obligation to take down that risk for America. Hallelujah, Pompeo, my Lord and Savior. You go on the front line about the other two sidekicks. Having over decades established Hezbollah as the ultimate boogeyman, despite their not targeting Americans or the U.S., and in fact being primarily focused against Israeli expansionism and aggression, the neocons are now doing their best to use raw fear of terrorism to motivate Americans to support an invasion of U.S. invasion of Venezuela. And I'll say this, hands off on Venezuela, and I am not a Maduro worshiper myself. And if Americans are not sufficiently propagandized that the Venezuelan government is the new Hitler and must be disposed before it overthrows more babies in incubators and distributes more Viagra to its troops, Breitbart is always good for the few low IQ chunks of red meat into the feverish mad masses. They breathlessly report proof of the depravity of Maduro, that Nicolas Maduro threatens to kill American troops if they invade Venezuela. Hell, man, what's it's like if someone comes in your house, if I have to shoot back at them, I'm the bad guy? Give me a break. Good grief. Damn. What a revelation this has been. It has been country in history that actually welcomed a hostile invasion. What is next for Venezuela and the neocon regime change plan? Well, it's not going to plan at present, but as with all of these operations, is the neocons holding the cards and the cash. The correlation of forces are definitely on their side. The neocon regime changers must only hit the target once, where the legitimized government of Venezuela must parry each blow. As for the obligatory disclaimer, this is getting tedious. No, we don't need support Maduro or socialism or all the really bad things he's accused of in Venezuela. Our opposition is, as American patriots, we don't want a global U.S. empire that arrogates to itself the authority to decide who is and who is not acceptable to govern a foreign country. No sanctions, no meddling, no regime change. A sound defense of this country and a passionate dedication to leading not by force or subterfuge, but by example. Like I said, my friends, I support a common defense rather than an imperial offense. The neocons have been giving the carte blanche by a seemingly lazy or uninterested President Trump. We will rise to the occasion and defend the real American values against their obsessive, failed attempts to conquer the globe. We will hold our representatives in Congress accountable to real American values. There is some wavering in Congress about an implied authorization for the use of force in Venezuela. It is a unique opportunity for us to make our presence known in any way that might make a difference. What do you say? It is not hard. Your continued support for our efforts to get the real news about the American people is so much appreciated. More now than ever, your contributions to the Ron Paul Institute are tax deductible and are critical to our being able to expand message of peace and prosperity. We appreciate your generosity. Sincerely yours, Daniel McAdams, Executive Director, Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Hit it right out of the ballpark. These people I support too. I support Ron Paul Institute as well. I'm not afraid to say it. Because principle over party, my friends. And you got these stooges in there want to invade. We'll get the three amigos in there. You know, Yippee Yappy and Yahooey. Pompeo, Bolton, and Rubio. Throw their butts in the front line. Let's see how tough these glam boys are. Okay? Plain and simple. Bunch of stooges. That's all they are. Shame on them. Every single one ought to be ashamed. I hope Senator Rubio comes to a town meeting and I can call him out on it. And I said, look, if you're going to be tough, you go on the front line of battle, don't bring your mirror. I'll say right in front of his family. Not to crucify them, but let them think about it. Because what he's doing is saying endangering other families' lives. And that's blasphemy. That's why I say support a republic, not an empire. Period. And once again, hands off of Venezuela. Say no to foreign intervention. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you said something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please feel free to send your correspondence to Decorum. Plus, I'll be posting all my social media sites and email addresses on my Spreaker page, okay? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.